Hello, Radiant One, and a very big and a very warm welcome to Mastery, the show and podcast for brilliant spiritual beings just like you, having a human experience ready to ignite the mastery inherent in you, as well as grow and expand from within and wanting to lead with love in work, business, and life. Designed to activate the mastery already within you, here we merge the worlds of seen and unseen, magic and miracles with the mundane and the practical, spirituality with strategy, the energetic with the physical, and business, work, and life with a whole lot of love and soul. I'm your host, spiritual business coach, business developer, and radical love rebel Maria Serafina. And it is my deep honor, my great pleasure, and joy to share this episode with you. I serve business owners and leaders wanting to learn and be supported as you navigate leading with heart and soul. I do that through the Spiritual Leadership Academy, the Spiritual MBA, and one-on-one spiritual business coaching full of intuition and energetic alignment. You can find out more about everything on my website, mariaserafina.com. Having been called to this show and podcast, it is my strong guess that mastery is already inherent within you, Radiant One. If you'd like to expand and amplify that mastery, download the Mastery Activation I've created for you. Originally released within my paid membership, The Elevation, I've now made it available to all. Go to mariaserafina.com/MA or click the link in the description to receive it. Remember, if you enjoy Mastery, make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, or leave a review to amplify the energy and love being shared in these transmissions so they can reach more and more gorgeous radiant beings like you. Today I'm joined by Anne Goncalves, yoga teacher, author of 2 books about yoga, and on a mission to create a calm revolution. She's been practicing yoga for over 20 years and specializes in yin yoga and yoga nidra, and holds teacher trainings, yoga retreats, as well as teaches online. Slight disclaimer, I am completely biased when it comes to Anne's brilliance because, as you'll hear, we've walked together for probably more than a decade where Anne, on and off, has been a client of mine, returning whenever she is ready for her next cycle of growth and expansion. Supporting and witnessing her rise and evolution has been such a blessing. It was sitting in sacred conversation with another client of mine, Aga Bera, and discovering that there was so much I didn't know about her spiritual journey that inspired me to invite Anne on. Luckily, she said yes. Here is our sacred conversation. My darling radiant Anne, welcome to Mastery. I suppose I am smiling all over my face because you and I know each other. I think we should add a disclaimer that we have worked together. Well, you've been a client of mine for years, and when I had a sacred conversation with another client of mine whom you also know, Aga. There were so many things that she shared despite us having worked together that I never knew, and that sort of inspired me to be like, I want to know your spiritual journey as well. And luckily you said yes. Would you start us off by just briefly introducing yourself? Let us know who you are and what you do in this world.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me on your podcast. My name is Anne Goncalves and I'm a yoga teacher. I live in Denmark. I have not always been a yoga teacher, so I was a graphic designer for many years. I worked in London in the publishing industry and was an art director there. And then about 15 years ago, I experienced a long period of stress and really a big, I call it my stress meltdown. And that really made me stop and review my life. And I really had to make some hard decisions on where I wanted to live, how I wanted to live. So I quit my job in publishing and I became self-employed 15 years ago. So that's, for some people, it may not sound like the easiest decision, and it's not. But it was the only decision that I could really make at that time, and I've never looked back. I cannot imagine not being self-employed today. And then I continued for a few years being a graphic designer with my own clients. I was also had been doing yoga for many, many years. And I started to teach because I had taken some teacher trainings, mostly for my own, just doing it for myself. And then I started to teach. And that was actually because of Aga that you also interviewed. And it's her fault that I'm teaching, actually, because she was already teaching, and we had met when at some workshop in Copenhagen with an American yoga teacher, and then we got together. We just really hung out all the time, talked about all things yoga, like constantly talking about yoga. And then at some point, she needed someone to sub for her some yoga classes, and I just kept saying, no, I can't teach. Like, there's no way. I'm just doing it for myself. There's no way I can teach. I was so scared. And she just kept pushing gently but firmly and just saying, yes, you can. I'm really encouraging you. I think you would be great at this. And so finally I said yes to sub for one of her classes, and it was just the most amazing experience. And I thought, I quite like this, and I think I'm good at this. Like, I just felt this natural pull towards teaching that I had never imagined before. And so I started teaching just a weekly class, and then I started teaching workshops. I studied myself, so I'm a person who is always studying because I can't stop. And so, today I've published 2 books on yoga.
I was going to mention, I was like, you're also an author.
I'm an author. I'm a yoga teacher. I'm a teacher trainer. So what I do today is mainly teaching teacher trainings. So I have a yin yoga teacher training here in Denmark. And I'm combining that with my knowledge of Chinese medicine. So I'm also studying classical Chinese medicine. And I'm just a forever student. So
yes,
that's my background. And then I've had the great pleasure of having you alongside me on this journey as my coach, my spiritual coach, and business coach, of course. And that's been amazing.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Yes, I don't know that I remember that it was Aga who pushed you, but I absolutely love that. Also because the episode that we did with Aga ended up, I think the name is something like building a business based on your passion or something like that. And that is like essentially what you have accomplished or achieved over the past, I suppose, 12 years. So tell us, when and how did your spiritual journey begin? Yeah, when and how did it begin? Let's start there.
I think it really began when I was around 13 years old, because that's when you get confirmation, as it's called here in Denmark.
Yes.
So I grew up in a household or a family where religion did not really play a huge role. It was not like we went to church when someone got married, and that was it. But then here in Denmark, when you're 13, 14 years old, we start to study Christianity a little bit more in depth. In preparation for this confirmation. And that's really when I started to question religion. And I think that's what opened me up to spirituality. And I remember my dad, who has always said that he was an atheist. And I had a lot of great talks with him around that time when I was 13, because I was I doubted very much whether I should get this confirmation or not, I didn't feel that it was right for me.
Mm,
I didn't feel that religion was right for me.
mm.
And this, I'm talking about the sort of the church, the institution. I'm
Yes.
not talking
Yes.
about God, however you
Mm.
define God. What is it? Is it
Yeah.
an energy? Is it a male person sitting up there in the
Yeah.
heavens, or what is it? Like
Yeah.
that's there are so many definitions of God, so I don't want to go into that here. But it was just like it was more the institution
Yes.
and the religion that I just felt, even at that age when I was quite young,
Yeah.
and we had not really talked about religion or Christianity at home, but I just felt like, no, this is not, it's not me. It's not really, nah, doesn't seem right. But I did end up getting my confirmation because my dad actually advised me to do it, even though he does not believe in God. But he said, look, there's not, um, do it in case you might regret it one day. It's
Mm.
like nothing bad is going to happen if you do it.
No.
It's just like a ritual. You're not, and I even had the talk with the priest also, and I said, I can't promise you anything. I don't want to go up there in the
Yeah.
church and make a big vow that I cannot keep.
Mm.
So, and the priest also said, look, don't worry. This is not like you're signing up to something like, and you have to promise and you, so I ended up doing it, even though I didn't feel that it was the right thing for me. But I still, like, I don't think you can really make a choice at that age. Um, so I personally think you should get a confirmation when you're 18 or 20. You need a lot more maturity and a
Yes.
lot more knowledge to make
Yeah.
that decision.
Yeah.
But I think that's when it started to stir for me.
That there
And
was something
then,
other than religion.
yeah,
And I
and
just,
also faith. What is it,
yes,
and how do we use it? And yeah,
there's two things, and one, I wonder what your take on this is, because I remember being confirmated as well when I was 13 and 14, and I had, um, I don't know that it was a conversation. It was more like questioning the priest and saying, so, because based on what they taught us, I came to him and said, okay, so you're telling me that God always forgives and there's always a new tomorrow. And he was very happy, like clapping his hand, thinking, great student. And then I said, but if God always forgives and there is always a new tomorrow, how can there be a hell? And I don't remember what his response was. I only remember my reaction to it was like, that's a load of BS. Um, and the reason why I continued was because my aunt had made this, like, it was my first tailor-made dress. Like, I looked horrible. Like, looking at the photos now, it's just like a pillbox hat. But it was like, that was why I continued with it. Like, and today I know in Denmark, it's a huge thing. Like, people pay more than they pay for weddings for these things. And it's like, what? So that's number one. And that's the question. I'm wondering if you found that was in there as well. And the second thing I want to highlight is that to me, the religious ritual of confirmation, which is confirming your faith, like when you were baptized as a child, is very interwoven with puberty and the transition that we have from child into people who are able to give birth and be fertile. And there's a correlation there, I think. But I'm wondering, like, was that part of it as well? Like, because it was for me, like the gifts and the dress and the thing, or
I
or
don't remember that being a huge
no,
issue for me. I'm sure that part of it was maybe, there was
yeah.
something there. But I really feel that when I was around that age, maybe it started already when I was 12.
Mm,
Um, I was introverted. Like I really liked to I liked music. I could spend
mm,
hours in my room just listening to music and
mm,
reading books, and I think my curiosity and my desire to learn
Mm.
was already there from a
Yes.
very early age. And so when this opened up
Yeah.
when I was 13, and we
Yeah.
started to, go in that direction
Yeah.
in school, and going to the priest, and heading towards confirmation, I started to ask these big questions. And I really feel that that was the main part, the
Yeah.
most important part for me at
Yeah.
that stage. And it was really, I feel, also we had a very, very sweet priest. She was
Mm.
really, really, I really liked her. So I
Yeah.
didn't feel like, and she was very open-minded and ready to answer questions, but
Mm.
I still felt that the religion as a whole
Yes.
did not encourage you to ask questions.
Mm.
And for someone like me, I question everything.
Yes.
And this is also where my curiosity and my need for learning new things,
Yeah.
it's driven by this
Yeah.
curiosity, and
Yeah.
this, I'm always asking questions.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah.
And then when I came to when I started gymnasium or high
Yeah.
school,
Nice. Yeah.
so when I was 16 until I was 18, 19, I went to high school, or gymnasium, as we call it here in Denmark. And then we had again these religion classes.
Mm.
But in those, we were introduced to different religions. So it was
Mm.
everything from Christianity to
Mm.
Islam to Buddhism to Aboriginal,
Mm. Mm.
all kinds of faiths and
Mm.
belief
Mm.
systems. And I was introduced to Buddhism,
Mm.
and I just remember reading, and it was about it, and I was just, this was like a whole new world opening up, and I felt this was my first. That's where I really felt a connection.
Mm.
And what I remember so clearly was that the Buddha said to his followers, "Don't believe a word that I said."
Mm.
Question everything, and then when you find that it is true for you,
Mm.
then you believe it.
Mm.
And when I read that or heard it from my teacher, I don't know what it was, but for me that was just like, yeah,
Mm.
this is
Mm.
how it's supposed to be. And so
Mm.
I started reading more and more about Buddhism, because that just, it felt so true for
Mm.
me, and I was longing for some kind of explanation
Mm.
about, how life works and nature and all the things around us.
Mm.
And I found it in Buddhism. And I later went on, many years later, when I was 29, I took my Buddhist, what's it called? What's the word? I can't remember the word, but it's
Mm.
like a ceremony where you take like your Buddhist
Okay.
vows, so to speak. And today I'm not a practicing Buddhist. I used to be, with daily Buddhist meditations and
Yeah.
rituals. I don't practice as much
Wow.
anymore, but I still feel that Buddhism is probably where I belong the most, I would say. And since then, I studied yoga and, of course, all the yogic philosophy. So
Mm.
there are many other layers on top of that
Mm.
now. So
Mm.
today, I don't feel like I have one
Mm.
sort of, I can just say that I am this or I am that.
Mm.
And so I consider myself a spiritual person,
Mm.
not a religious person,
Mm. Mm.
but a very, very deeply spiritual person.
Mm.
But I can't say that I am Buddhist or I
Mm.
am,
Mm.
one direction
Mm. Mm.
as such. Yeah.
So a couple of things I want to highlight. Number one is to have is that this is what I see, the integrity and the authenticity at 13 to be like, this is like to have that knowing in a sense of that's sort of like a compass, right? Like that's like to know, like to be in integrity from that early on. Like I said, for me, it was all about the dress. Like it was, that's not where I was at. That's number one thing that I want to highlight. The other thing is that you mentioned your first meeting with Buddhism. What I heard in that, what was the experiential or almost kinesthetic experience of it, the embodied experience of that which is, or some call God, or I call energy, I call love. And for me, when we have that experience, or start to have these experiences and that connection, we then move from having to believe in anything into a knowing of, this is simply how it is for me. It doesn't mean that it's the same for you. And there's also that phrase of one song, but many DJs, in terms of in terms of what, I suppose, in terms of what you're describing. When you say that you were a practicing Buddhist, like, when did you, if you know, when did it start to fade out, or was there anything particular that made you move into other things, or like what happened? What happened?
What happened?
Yeah.
So I was, so I started being fascinated with Buddhism and started reading about it when I was maybe around 16, 17. And then I was not practicing, but just reading about it for in the coming years. And then when I was, when was it? So when I was around 27, I think it was, I moved to London.
Mm.
And in London, I met, I remember how it happened, but that's a longer story. But anyway, I found a Buddhist center in
Mm.
London, quite close to where I lived. And I thought, okay, well, I've always been attracted to, or felt this pull
Yeah.
towards
Yeah.
Buddhism. Let's go and check it out.
Yeah.
What is it like? What are the practices?
Yeah.
I also longed for a place to, for a community and to learn these practices. And also, what I really like about the Buddhist practices, um, there are different directions in Buddhism also.
Yeah.
So there are different practices, different meditations.
Mhm.
I learned meditation that was, included a lot of very detailed visualization.
Mm.
And the longer version was like, I don't know, 45 minutes, where it was like a series of visualizations. So you could say that it was very active meditation.
Mm. Mm.
And another thing that we also did was prostrations.
Mm.
So this is like a physical movement where
Mm.
you prostrate, you like kneel onto the floor,
Mm.
and then you prostrate. So you're like spreading,
Mm.
you're lying down on your stomach,
Mm.
spreading your arms out, full
Mm.
prostration,
Mm.
right?
Mm.
And for me, that was really um I've been meditating for many years, but I'm a very like, I need to be physical. I
Mm.
really I need to feel it in my body. So I found it hard to sit still and meditate, which is
Mm.
also why I started doing yoga, which is why I got so into yoga, because
Mm.
that felt to me like moving meditation.
Yes.
So in that way, that was like, okay, now we're talking. Now we're connecting the whole thing, like
Yeah.
body, mind, spirit,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so back to your question. So I was going to this meditation center in London for quite a bit of time, maybe a few years. And then because in Buddhism, like any kind of organized religion or institution, uh, there are, different directions, different people who don't always agree on which direction should we go. And I was so disappointed when I found out that the Buddhist center that I was coming to, there was some disagreement between the bigger lamas,
Okay.
um, and I just I was so disappointed. I thought, this is Buddhism. Come on.
Yes.
You cannot paint it with
You cannot be
this,
human.
no, not with this human like
Yeah.
envy or disagreements. Just, don't put that shit on my Buddhist practice. But so I had to step away from this particular Buddhist center. I found another Buddhist center in London, actually with a Danish Lama,
Oh.
a woman, and from the Kagyu lineage, and it was a very beautiful place to come. And she was very open-minded and wouldn't say a bad word about any of the other lineages. And I thought, yeah, this is a true Buddhist. So I went there for a few years, and then I moved back to Denmark
Yeah.
in 2011. And then I tried a couple of places in Copenhagen where I lived at the time, but never really found my Buddhist home, so to speak.
No.
And then I have not, like, I still enjoy the practices. I still have, read the teachings, and they still give me so much.
Yeah.
I don't feel the need to follow any particular style anymore, like in any certain way of meditating. So with all the practices that I've learned today, from my yoga practice, from Chinese medicine, Qigong, energy practices. I have my daily rituals and practices, and I have my favorites, but sometimes I also try new things. And it doesn't mean that I'm just shopping around and then, 5 minutes here, I'm bored, let's go to the next thing. But you said this one song, many DJs, and I call it like there's one source and there are many directions from that, or many interpretations, you could say. And there are many ways of working with spirituality, with energy, with body, mind, spirit. And to me, it's very important that the body is connected to the mind and to the spirit, because there are also many spiritual practices that are very only concerned with the head. Like, I just want to open my top chakras. I don't really care about this. Let me just go up here. And I'm like, no, you have to go down here first. This is, this is your time on earth. This is your embodied experience.
And the less you actually focus on I would say, I would question your quality of experience on earth if you're not embodied in your practice, if you're not physical in your practice in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I could speak for myself in terms of, before I was in the head and all out about all of that upper things, but you can literally lose your mind, like, if you're not grounded in properly before you take, quote unquote, off or go out into that. So a couple of things that I draw out from what you're saying is, when it comes to any sort of spirituality or teaching or anyone that you're following, the number one thing is to discernment for you. Like, if it's someone if it's someone who's trying to bring you out of yourself and not back into yourself and in connection with yourself, someone who's trying to get you to follow them rather than question, and not connect you back in with your truth. Because, like you said, like, I've said this for years, like, take what serves you, leave the rest. I'm here to, as a way shower, or as a light, as a guide, but I'm not, my truth is not necessarily your truth. And even if our truth are not the same, that doesn't mean that I will badmouth you or talk bad about you behind your back, because it doesn't. If you have to push others down in order to lift yourself up, you're off on the wrong path. So, So do you have an experience of, because I'm not sure that I hear that, but do you have an experience of sort of um moving away from spirituality or religion, not religion, and then being brought back? Or do you feel like it was always there in just bigger or larger forms in your life and your business as well, I suppose?
No, I don't feel like I ever moved away.
Yeah,
I think that I experienced being part of this Buddhist community
yeah,
and then experienced the huge disappointment
yeah,
when I found out about the rivalry and the
yeah,
bad mouthing other,
yeah,
you
yeah,
know, other Buddhist lineages.
yes,
And for me, that was just a big red flag.
yeah.
I thought that's not, you're not pure in your heart or in your teachings, even if, and that's again, I think I really truly believe that everything comes from one source,
Mm,
and there are just so many ways of accessing that
mm,
source.
mm,
Whether you go to church
mm,
and you pray to God and Jesus,
mm,
or whether you go to a Buddhist practice and do
mm.
prostrations, and you don't pray to Buddha, but you kind of um, um, how do you say,
Commune,
uh, overgiver.
surrender.
You surrender to the teachings,
Mm,
um, and it happened. It's happened to me so many times that also I used to, like, I have I'm educated in Ayurveda,
mm,
this Indian holistic health system.
mm,
And then when I started to learn more about Chinese medicine, at first I was confused. It was, oh, but then I've learned something different from Ayurveda, and now this is Chinese medicine.
mm.
So the five elements in Ayurveda are different to the five elements in Chinese medicine. And at first I was like, which one should I choose?
Yeah,
I can either believe in that one or that one.
yeah,
And today I studied Ayurveda, and now I'm studying Chinese medicine, and I just see how it all connects. I mean, and that's why I'm so convinced today that no matter what religion you are
mm,
following, or spiritual practice, or Ayurveda or Chinese medicine, or whatever it all comes from the same source. And it's just us humans who are so
yeah,
concerned with,
yeah,
oh no, this is my teachings, this is my way of doing things, this is the right way, yours is not the
yeah,
right way.
yeah,
And I also want to mention, because I think for some people maybe, and I know this is also the argument for from some spiritual teachers, is that, oh, you shouldn't just shop around and then take a little bit here and a little bit there. And I can see their point when it comes to someone who is constantly shopping around
mm,
and never doing one practice for
yeah, longer
a
period.
longer period and
Yeah,
really trying it on.
yes, yes.
But because you can easily get, how do you say, seduced. You
Mm,
can easily get seduced as, oh, here's another practice. I'm
mm,
sure this will help me with
yeah,
my
yeah,
calm, or
yeah,
attracting abundance, or
yeah,
attracting, I don't know, whatever. And then you just, oh, 2 days here, it didn't work. Okay, on to the next thing.
yeah,
I'll try this for
yeah,
5 days. It didn't work. Okay,
yeah,
next thing.
yeah.
So it's not about doing that, but
No.
it's about, yeah, you can have one practice. For me, it's coming back to yoga,
Mm,
specifically yin yoga, as my physical and spiritual practice.
mm,
And then I can also add other layers.
mm,
And recently I've been trying out some Kundalini Kriya,
mm,
which I've never been attracted to
mm,
before,
mm,
but I've just been trying it out now, and just like
yeah. Yeah,
seeing,
and
that.
I talk about that a lot. I talk about, like, because discipline within the spiritual community seems to be like a bad word. It's like they're like discipline and rituals and like, but to me it's not, because if you're not reaping, like me now having, meditated for, I don't know, many, many years, probably close to 20 years. I have a benefit of it now. Like I didn't have that in the beginning, and I have this pillar of just calm within me, which I attribute to my daily meditation and my daily energy work. And and I wouldn't have that without the discipline of doing the same things over
Yeah.
and over again. And I also want to highlight because one of the things that I am very or something that I'm discovering more and more is the both and not the either or. What you mentioned in terms of, the five elements in Chinese medicine and also in Ayurveda, and how it's not either, like the deeper I go into my spiritual practice, the more oneness I experience, and the more I see that it is a both and not an either or. So yeah, it's not me good, you bad, or you bad, me good. Like we can all be, and your teachers, I love how that goes back to, again, your integrity. Like there's like once you saw that they were actually infighting and bad mouthing other people, there's an integrity piece in you that's like, no, I will not be part of this if it's not, if the intention and the origin of it is not pure, I'm not part of it. How have you found that your spirituality have grown over the years, and how have you found it growing in your business? Because I know originally in the beginning when we started working together, it wasn't something that you necessarily talked about or used in your business, even though to me yoga is a spiritual practice, but it's not something that I noticed in the beginning, and I've seen it more and more over the years. It's sort of like you're blossoming more and more. How has that experience been for you in terms of your work and your business?
So letting my more spiritual side coming through in my business, I think has been to do with me being more confident. So in the beginning, when I was teaching yoga, I felt more confident just teaching yoga from a more physical point of view. So,
Yes.
if you do this pose, you place your foot here and your hand there, and then that will affect this muscle, and you will gain strength, or you will
Yes.
release your psoas muscles or whatever. And so I felt that I was confident enough to teach the physical side of yoga,
Yes.
even though the spiritual side was also very much, it's a huge part of yoga. But I guess it just took me a while to find my way of teaching it.
Yes.
Because for me, it's very, very important to have the integrity, as you say, and also have the embodiment. Like if I've experienced teachers who I think, you can just feel that they are not embodied in their practice. You just sense that this is, you read about this and then you started to teach it, or maybe you've just started to explore it yourself and now you're starting to teach it, but it's not really embodied in you yet. So, and that feels very hollow and empty for me. So it's very important for me when I teach something that goes more into spirituality or more into the spiritual layers of our beings, that it's something that it should come from my embodied experience, and not just something that I've read.
No.
And yeah, so I think that's very important. And I think that I'm at a point now in my business where I feel comfortable in doing that.
Yeah.
And also, I will say that, studying Chinese medicine has really opened up a whole other level for me of understanding energy, understanding qi, understanding how energy moves through the meridian system in our bodies. And then when I felt really comfortable with that, and I could start, and that I'm doing the practices myself, not just yin yoga, but I also do like qigong, tapping practices. And it's so evident, and like you feel it right away. Oh wow, I just activated my heart meridian by tapping on my arm, or it's I can feel it.
Yes.
It's not just something I'm talking about.
Yes.
I think that there are, the whole chakra system has been very popular for many years, and also very popular to talk about and teach, from yoga teachers. But I'm not sure all of them have really experienced the energy of the chakra system. And again, I'm just all about the freedom of choice, and know what you're talking about and have this embodied experience of it. So that's just one example of the chakra system. I feel like many yoga teachers take on the chakra system, and then they teach it from the point of view that, oh, this is the rule. There are 7 chakras. They have these colors. They have these attributes.
Yeah.
But when you just do a little bit of digging into the teachings of the chakras, you know that the 7 chakra system is just one of the systems.
Yeah.
You could be teaching 5. You could be teaching 12, 21.
Yes.
Like, what is the origin of the chakra system? All the symbols that have been put on, like crystals or planets and all of that, that's not in the original chakra teachings. But it's like you take these concepts that become popular, and then, oh, I'm going to teach something from this, instead of having the embodied experience and then teach from that. I feel like when I'm teaching yoga now, I connect to source. That's how I see it. And when that happens and I connect to source and I'm teaching from there, because I have experienced also on my own body, what can this yin yoga pose do for me? Sometimes I feel this, sometimes I feel that, sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's easy. So when I have allowed myself to have all these experiences in my body, and see how this embodied, this physical experience have opened me up to emotional, mentally, and a spiritual experience, then I can teach from that place. And that is a teacher who is much more, I feel that's how I teach anyways, because that's how I feel I can be my most authentic when I teach others. So I don't know if I went off completely on another. Did I answer your question? I don't know.
I think no, I think this is beautiful. I think, and it quote unquote embodies who I know you to be and what I know you to do in the world, and that is being about embodiment. And I think it's very important to highlight the physical experience of spirituality, that it's not just you sitting on a pillow meditating for hours and hours and hours, but it's also about being, because like I used to think that, ascension, because we talk about ascension, it's like getting done with this and then just saying, see ya suckers, and taking off. And that's not what we're here. Like, we're here to pass on. And I love the physical experience as well. When I do, energy work or energetic alignment, and I work that and I teach that, I love making it very practical and useful and giving people the own experience of it, so that it's not, again, don't believe what I'm saying. Like, you don't have to, like, whether you believe in me or not doesn't change anything. That's one of the things I say about, like, for example, like things like Mercury retrograde, or the moon affecting the waters on Earth, or the sun creating all life. You don't have to believe in that shit. Like, it's still there, whether you believe in it or not. And so I personally have spent too much time trying to believe in stuff rather than trying, like, being practical. So that's where I'm at. It's like the practicality of things. try it out.
Don't believe in anything, experience it.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly. Experience it, like the embodiment, the physical, and the whole notion that I used to think that the spiritual journey was like, yeah, then you do the spiritual journey and then I am done. Then it's like, what? Then what am I supposed to do with the rest of my life, right? But then what I realized is that this is an ongoing journey. Like life is a spiritual journey. Business and work is a spiritual experience. It's a spiritual journey where all of this stuff comes up that you can then process and reflect upon and expand through and grow with. And just as, yeah, we're part of nature, we are a part of nature. We're not apart from nature. So that's what I hear in terms of what you're sharing. And I also, because I know, like I've been intimately involved with you and your work for so many years, that embodiment of it, the physics. So it's, and I think that we are moving into that. I think more and more people are moving into that. So it's no longer about the taking off, the wanting to get out. Although I do know that there are mind expanding drugs that, get a boost from time to time. And I'm not necessarily against that. I personally, knowing myself, I'm not going to touch any of it. What I will always emphasize is make sure that you're with a person who knows what they're doing and that you're brought back into your physical body properly. Because if you're not, the fuses can blow. Okay, sorry, that was me going off on a rant. But yeah, no, the embodiment of what you're
Yeah.
sharing, like that makes total sense to me.
There is actually a
Go ahead.
sentence, if I can just say this, and I think it's sometimes being quoted that the Buddha is supposed to have said this. I'm not sure if he said it exactly in those words, but the body is a vehicle for awakening.
Yes,
And for me, that is
yes,
just, yes, that sums it up, because if
yes,
you try to bypass the body,
yes,
like you're missing
yeah,
so much. If
yeah,
you are trying to meditate or you're trying to do your yoga practice, because
yes,
there are yoga practices also that does not involve that much physical practice,
yeah,
but are more concerned with what's going on from
yeah,
on top level here.
yeah,
And
yeah,
it's like you say, ascension, or it's about this, how can I just go up here and connect to this part up here,
yes,
but you're kind of missing what's down here, which can, the body is a
yes,
vehicle for
yeah,
awakening. it's
yes.
it's so beautiful.
I remember this quote, and I'm not sure if this was Marianne Williamson who I heard it from. I don't know if it's her quote, but she said, God cannot do for you what they cannot do through you. And
Mm.
that to me was like that experience of it, like that I am, and you mentioned the vessel. One of the things that a label that's sort of being put on me over the past few years after having added energy work to my work is healer. And I struggle with that term so hard
Mm.
because I don't consider myself to be the healer.
Mm.
Yes, healing happens in our sessions. Healing happens when we do the energy work that I do with people, but I am not the healer. I am the channel, I am the vessel, I am the guide, I am the coach. And you are ultimately the one who is the healer. So yes, I am a
Yeah.
healer for myself. I am healing myself, but I struggle with the label of calling myself a healer because I don't consider, does that make sense in terms of it?
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
that's taking, yeah, and in terms of what you're showing, in terms of being the vessel and you providing that. So how have you, you know me, you know that when I do that horse mouthy thingy, that's when I process it, that's when things are coming through. One question, that was a question because I've seen the reviews of your teacher trainings and people are raving, people are loving them. And unfortunately for those of who are listening, they're in Danish, they're not in English. So if you're Danish and listening,
Yet.
oh yeah, well, yeah. Yes. So yay. Um, how have you found your own personal satisfaction, quality of life growing as you have been teaching, as you've been passing on this wisdom and this knowledge? I don't know where that question comes from, but that's what I'm supposed to ask.
So my quality of life has
Yeah, my
I think that when I started teaching yoga, I had classes, and then I've moved on from teaching regular classes to in 2018 I started to do teacher trainings and courses. So I teach mainly yin yoga and now yoga nidra also. And it's because of my own desire to always, I'm a little nerdy when it comes to, well, a lot, when it comes to yoga and to these practices that I so deeply love. And I just want other people to experience the same. So because of my desire to always learn more, this is also why I started to do teacher trainings, because that's when I get a chance to teach in depth. And because I also see that we live in a society where everything goes so bloody fast and people are just, I've seen yoga teacher trainings advertised that, become a yoga teacher in a weekend. And I'm like,
yes.
What about embodiment?
Yes.
How are you going to learn something and really truly connect to it in a weekend? Ain't gonna happen. But so when I teach now in mainly my teacher trainings is it just amazes me all the time when I see the people who come to my teacher trainings, when I see it in their eyes, when they go like,
yes,
when they realize something,
yes,
and when they feel it, and when they embody it, and that gift is then something that they will go and spread out to other people, and together we're spreading all these waves of embodiment that the world so desperately needs. And it's funny because just a few weeks ago I was talking to someone who took my teacher training last year, and now she's coming back to join me as an assistant on my upcoming teacher training that is starting next week. And so we had a little chat about, just some practical stuff. And she said to me, look, after I finished your training last year, I actually did another training and in another yoga style. And she said that when I was doing your teacher training, it sometimes was frustrating to me that you didn't give us like the manual or the something to read beforehand. Or just sometimes I didn't even give them like what's the theme of the day, or when is the practice today, like, because I don't really have that set like layout or schedule. I don't do very fixed schedules, I have to say. And sometimes it's frustrating for my students, and I am aware of that. And I'm sorry for that. But there's a very good reason why I do it this way. And that is because I want them to experience it. I don't want them to read it. I want them to feel it. I want them to have this embodied experience. And so my student and now upcoming assistant, she was just telling me that in her other teacher training, they were giving these handouts or papers for the manual. They were asked to read it to prepare for the next day. And she said what the result was just that she was up in her head. She was reading and thinking. She was not feeling and sensing in the body. And to me, that's the whole, then you're just missing the point.
But it's also, again, going back to integrity and you being true to who you are. And that is something that I've seen expanding and growing over the years. You embodying more of, this is who I am, this is how I teach, this is how it is to move in my spaces, and you're more than welcome to come in. And if it doesn't resonate or serve you, there's plenty of others that you can go to in a grounded, strong, powerful, masterful way, is one of the things that I've seen. Yeah, I'm not going to go into more of that because then I'll just start crying. We are time's flying. One final question I want to ask. This is a question that I've started asking, and I'm excited to hear what you have to say. What is mastery to you?
First thing I want to say is mastery is not thinking that you have mastered it. Because I think if you get to that level where you think, oh, I'm done, there's nothing more to know or to learn, then that's when you start to sleep. So for me as a yoga teacher, like I say, I'm first and foremost a student. And I think any yoga teacher who does not say that they're a student, that they're finished with studying, doesn't mean you have to study as much as I do, because I'm just like, I cannot stop. But you're always a student, because if you're not a student, it's like you've reached the end of, you're no longer curious, you're no longer open to other possibilities, other ways of seeing things. You could learn some things. So mastery is always in development. It's always moving. I feel like if you get stuck and you feel, oh, now I'm the master, then that's the end of you. Because then you get stuck in that, oh, I'm the master, I know everything there is to know about something. I don't need to study more. I don't need to be open and curious. And then maybe that's what happens to some people, like the Buddhist center I went to, that they felt like we've reached a certain level now of mastery, so we don't need to ask questions anymore. We just feel like this is how things are. Yeah. And so that way you're missing out on the opportunity for other people to come into your space, to learn from you, and to have their own experiences instead of something that you have mastered and that you want to put on top of them. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that mastery, of course, is reaching a certain level of knowledge where I'm pretty confident now that I have quite a bit of knowledge in yoga, and I have enough that I can teach it.
Yes.
But my mastery is always fluent, and it should always be in movement. Yes. It should always be about me also being first and foremost a student, and being humble, and being open and curious about, oh, I might learn something new tomorrow. And actually, I have my book here, my newest book about yin yoga. And I think it was after a conversation with you, because this book has been 4 years in the making.
Yes.
And it was just sat there on my computer, and I couldn't, like, I was missing the last piece of courage to get it out there. And then I think it was you who advised me, or you said you could just write in the first bit of the introduction to the book that here's a disclaimer, like, this is what I know now.
Yes.
And in a few years it might change. So I've actually written this here in the beginning of the book.
Aww.
This is a disclaimer that, maybe I will know something new tomorrow. Yes. And certainly within yin yoga, that has been known for many years, has been known to be like this. It's good for the connective tissue. So we're working with connective tissue in yin yoga. And the last few years, there's been a huge development in what we know about connective tissue and the classical form of yin yoga with the passive stretches where you're not moving. That was supposed to be good for the connective tissue. And now today we know that connective tissue actually benefits more from movement, which is why I add these micro movements into my yin yoga.
Yes.
And that's not how I started to teach. And this is certainly not what I was taught in my first yin yoga teacher trainings. This is like, this is the form.
Yes.
This is the rule.
Yeah.
Like, this is how yin yoga is taught.
Yes.
And I'm like, Then I started to ask questions.
Yes.
And so it's always in development. It's always, your mastery should always be in development and always moving.
Yes.
That's a true master if you can
yes,
be open and curious.
It's again, going back to what I mentioned, it's the both and. I can know that I am a master at my craft and at the same time be the student as well. It's not either or, it's both and. That's what I'm constantly being pulled back to. And also what you're saying is essentially, because if we reach a certain level and we think this is it, like that's stagnation, that is plateauing, that is, and if we look to nature, you know, a tree will consistently grow. It will consistently expand and grow, or, you know, there's a natural evolution. There's a constant cycle. And we as human beings are part of that throughout our lifetime. So thank you for sharing that. And I didn't know that you had included, yes, I remember that very distinctly, that is part of, you know, giving ourselves permission to grow and expand and not keeping ourselves stuck at what we were.
Yeah.
And also, if anyone who's a teacher or is listening or watching, then also know that, again, like what you're teaching now might not be what you're teaching in a year. Give yourself permission. I think Aga actually also shared this in her conversation about giving yourself permission to expand and grow and be curious about other things. And yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Do you have any final words before we say our goodbyes for now?
Keep moving.
Keep moving.
Movement is so important, and one of the most important sentences and teachings in my life comes from Chinese medicine.
Yeah.
Where there is flow, there is no pain.
Yes.
Basically, we need to keep moving. Everything is in movement. It doesn't have to be super fast like the world is moving today. No. But keep moving in whatever you're doing, and keep this, you know, to keep the flow in your physical body, in your mental body, being open to new opportunities, new ways of seeing things, in your spirituality, being open to, you know, things can occur, messages can occur, and be downloaded in many different forms. So just, be open and keep moving. That's my message.
Thank you. And to anyone who's listening or watching, there will be a link to my website where, you know, you'll find links to all of the Anne stuff. I highly recommend that you go check her out. Well, I'm completely biased on that. So thank you.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure.
You're welcome. Lots of love.
Thank you.
That is what I had for you in today's episode of Mastery with Maria Serafina. I hope it served you well. For all the deeds and details, click the link in the description and help me spread the love of this transmission by sharing it with a friend or on social media, or leave me a comment or review. Have a wonderful day. God bless.